The New Orleans was part of the last treaty-restricted class of heavy cruisers built by the United States. Its technical capabilities were covered in a previous video, which is linked at the end of this one, and so this video will cover the ship's career in more detail. The ship was laid down in 1931, launched in 1933, and commissioned in 1934, starting life with a tour of various European ports before switching oceans to escort the President to Hawaii, as well as exercising with the giant flying aircraft carrying airship USS Macon. And yes, you heard that correct, a gigantic airship acting as an aircraft carrier. Anyway, New Orleans then switched back and forth between the oceans for a bit, before settling in for an engine refit in late 1941 in Pearl Harbor. I mean, what could possibly go wrong there? When the Japanese air assault showed up, the ship was in trouble. With the engines shut down and minimal power from the docks, the ammunition hoists were non-functional, the guns were unpowered, and the ammunition lockers were shut. However, her crew made the best of it, forming human chains to pass along ammunition and breaking open the lockers. Everything from the 5-inch guns down to rifles and pistols was used, and the ship escaped without major damage, only suffering a few injuries to a near-miss fragmentation bomb. She was therefore able to run convoy missions and get her engines fixed, along with the new radar and 20mm cannon being installed during breaks between these. She was then part of the escort for the USS Lexington at the Battle of the Coral Sea, and first towed the stricken carrier after it was hit, before saving 580 of the crew once it became obvious that the ship could not be salvaged. Her next battle was somewhat more successful, as she protected USS Enterprise at the Battle of Midway, where the American pilots were able to destroy 4 Japanese carriers in exchange for the eventual loss of the Yorktown, a battle which pretty much eliminated the main striking power and a not insignificant portion of the pilot corps of the Japanese Navy. She was then assigned to screen the USS Saratoga during the invasion of the Solomon Islands, as well as covering the American invasion of Guadalcanal. During this period, the ship was out at sea for so long that she began to run out of food. Eventually, all meals consisted of spam and rice, then eventually just spam, and whatever anyone could find. Luckily, the ship was sent back to Pearl Harbor escorting the Saratoga, which had been torpedoed, before they were forced to subsist purely on various interesting ways of preparing spam. The ship's next mission would be part of the Guadalcanal campaign proper, which, if you've seen the previous video, will probably have you wincing in sympathy already. Sure enough, she suffered the curse of her class at the Battle of Tassafaronga, where 4 American heavy cruisers, 1 light cruiser and 4 destroyers took on 8 Japanese destroyers in a night action. It did not go well. 1 Japanese destroyer was sunk, but in exchange, the heavy cruiser USS Northampton was sunk, the New Orleans sister ship Minneapolis, as well as USS Pensacola were heavily damaged, both only being saved by the heroic efforts of their respective crews, and New Orleans herself was hit by a torpedo that blew off the front of the ship, including the forwardmost turret, which was needless to say something of an inconvenience. The crew got the ship to safety, threw some camouflage nets over it, and built a replacement front out of coconut logs before sailing the ship backwards, first to Australia, and then all the way home to America, still going backwards, to receive a full refit and significantly upgraded anti-aircraft batteries. One crewman is said to have explained this by stating that this way they never had their backs turned to their enemies, so they wouldn't be surprised by any further sneak attacks. 1943 saw the ship repaired and back in action, attacking 3 different island groups before the new Essex-class USS Lexington was torpedoed, and the New Orleans found itself helping another carrier called Lexington, although this time the ship was able to reach Pearl Harbor safely. 1944 would see the ship supporting several more invasions, as well as taking part in the Battle of the Philippine Sea, otherwise known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, and then the raid on Truk, where American carrier aircraft attacked the ships in harbour there, and the New Orleans, along with other ships, circled the place like a gigantic school of heavily armed sharks waiting to catch anything that came out. The task force did catch and sink 4 ships by gunfire in this manner. The pattern continued in 1945, with the ship helping the invasions of Okinawa and the Philippines, with the war ending with the ship still in the latter location. She would then land American troops in China and Korea, before helping bring many American servicemen home from the various islands and atolls that they'd been landed on at various points. The ship received a total of 17 battle stars, making it the joint 3rd most decorated ship in the US Navy during the Second World War, behind the Enterprise and the San Diego, and sharing its position with its sister ships the Minneapolis and San Francisco and the destroyer O'Bannon. The crew of the ship would receive many awards, including the American Defense Service Medal, the American Campaign Medal, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, the World War II Victory Medal, as well as 5 Navy Crosses, 10 Silver Stars, 1 Bronze Star, 1 Air Medal, and 206 Purple Hearts. The ship would be taken out of service in 1947 and placed in reserve before being eventually scrapped in 1959.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.